Is there only one universe?
I doubt it. But I don't know how you define universe. You know, if universe is everything that is, which is my, like, I guess earliest definition that I had of it, then there's one, you know, because one that is everything. I never understood when people said that the universe is finite, because what's past it? There has to be something past it. Like, you know, giant cats. If you just spend another million years as algae and grass and tree and bird and... or if there is self, or if it matters. I don't know. To answer your question, I do not know if there is only one universe.
What does matter?
Goodwill. Because it's hard enough as it is, you know. Which is one of the philosophies of New Fortune, too. It's hard enough to do anything, let alone, you know, run a nonprofit theater, or what's far harder than that, to get up on stage in front of people and share this with them without being kind and considerate and helpful. Because it's just hard enough, it's scary enough. We've all got our own defense mechanisms. Everybody does, even the toughest. So you're saying the existentialists might agree that apathy is a totally natural state of being? Sure, I'm sure that they would, because I mean, if you had to sum up existentialists, it's sort of, what's the point, right? I don't think existentialists have anything against contentment. They're not kamikaze, you know, they're not suicidal, they're actually very interesting individuals. They live with it, is what I mean to say. They find a way, they stay alive, they do their thing, they mind their own business. And however sad or happy they may be in their belief of the world, they must at least be content enough to continue to be.
Some of the greatest artists have had the biggest struggles. Is it more valuable to have a lot of turmoil in your life as an artist, or is it better to be content?
So of course you need, you know, trouble and turmoil in that. But I would also say that any of those actors or performers, I'm sure strive for contentment. And one of the reasons that a tragedy is because they never find it. And that a comedy is because they're trying so hard for it. Of course, everybody wants things to be right, you know. I remember when I was a kid, again, growing up in Phoenix, there were a lot of Mormon elders that would come and visit our neighborhood. And my dad invited a pair of them in. I remember Elder McClellan. And he had them in for tacos. And he asked them what they thought he should convert to Mormonism for. And they said that theirs was the only way to paradise. And he asked what that was, what paradise was. And the gist of it was that everything was perfect for eternity. And my dad said that that would be great for a couple weeks, maybe a couple months, maybe a couple years. But eventually, it wouldn't be worth as much if you couldn't have achieved that kind of perfection through being able to help someone, or being helped in your turn, or to overcome an obstacle, or really to have to come together for anything, to overcome, to help, you know. And he said that was his ideal. He said that heaven probably looked a lot like life here, now. What gets me, like, overjoyed? I just think the world that I get to walk in at least is the source of constant wonder and amazement and ridiculousness and honor. And I mean, I love just watching people on the street. Or my dad would always say when we were stuck in traffic, he would say, everyone in every one of those cars has a story, you know? And that's always been a sense of great perspective to me. And now I do wonder what their story is, and of course I can only speculate through glass. Like, you've done things that are crazy. You have a history that's inspired. You've lived all over the place, you know? But if you're just checking out at the grocery store, the clerk doesn't know that about you. But maybe the clerk should assume, like, should wonder, you know? Should wonder. And not just that everybody's just a face.
What's the next step in evolution for our minds, given the fact that we're always trying to, like, make things easier for us?
I've heard it said that what we're developing now is a retrieving rather than a retaining brain. I mean, I think that it's a blessing in one sense to not have to worry about remembering so many things. But it's also a shame, as I feel like it's easy to not take careful note, you know?
Are we products of our social environment, or do we create the environment with our own psychological projection?
Both again, I think, don't you? I think that we do, of course we can influence our environment and our society around us. We can be a force in it, but I'm sure that the society has to be a force on us as well. Just by living together, just by anybody in proximity together, you know, whatever you define as a society, you know, or how big your environment is. It's the chaos theory, right? Like butterfly flaps its wings in Central Park, it rains in Beijing, you know, or two roads diverged in a yellow wood. But we all have to have an influence on each other, hopefully for good. It's like when you learn a new word and then you see it everywhere, that you can interpret in every action that you're seeing everywhere you see circumstances that your state is truly what you believe that it was. I think there has to be some truth in that. Because if we are happy, little things are less likely to get you down. You know, if you've just had this great news and you're overjoyed, and then somebody says, oh, but you know, your credit card payment is late, whatever it is, and you go, oh, it doesn't matter as I'm happy, you know? Or if you had just the most rotten day, you know, you stubbed your toe, and you did, I don't know, you had a bad day, and you come home, and there's somebody that loves you waiting there for you, and you're just, you know, ready to be irritated with them. They'll be like, you look great, and you're going, yeah, right, you know, because you're already in a bad place. I wonder if you can actually influence what other people do because of how you feel about yourself.
Do you think you can?
Yeah, now that I think of it. Because if you really smile, if you smile at a stranger on the street that wasn't smiling before, they probably smile, you know. And even if that only lasts for that minute and they look away, they might go, that was nice, you know. So if there was enough of that around, I wonder if you could actually. People don't make enough eye contact anymore. I think that's part of it.
Is there meaning to life?
I don't know if there's meaning to life. But we all want it, you know? The whole Earth is just a chunk of a blasted out star, you know? And everything that grows on it, and every bit of coral and cat and you and I are just parts of it, and we evolve that way around us, and we consume more of it, and that becomes us, and we're just little bits of stardust, and every molecule in our body changes out every 7 years, you know? So sometimes I like to cop out when I think, what is the meaning of life? Because we have to ask ourselves that. And sometimes I think, well, maybe it doesn't matter. As long as we can get along with it. Socrates says that you can't look directly at the eclipse of the sun, because you would blind yourself. You have to look at it in dark, reflective ways. You look at it through a dark glass. And he says that if we were to look at the truth of our existence, that we may blind our souls. It is a really big universe. There ought to be a meaning somewhere. Or it's 42.
If we use the scientific method to discover or to kind of like determine what's true and what's not, but we're always getting new evidence, you know.
Yeah.
Does truth actually change over time based on evidence, or is truth constant?
That's a good question. I mean, our truths do change over time, but that's just because we've realized different truths. You know, that we revolve around the sun rather than everything revolving around us, or gravity, you know. That's changed, or the world being flat, you know. Our truth changes, but that doesn't mean that the truth changed. I keep wondering what obvious thing we're missing. Like gravity, like something that's just so part of our lives that we take it for granted.
What happens when our heart stops and our blood stops flowing?
I just asked myself that question the other day because I was watching a murder mystery and they went, no, it wasn't, it was Twin Peaks. And he was saying, well, how could he reposition his hand because of the rigor mortis? And he said, oh, rigor mortis hits the body, it comes to the body from toe to head, but it leaves the body from head to toe in 2 days' time. And I thought, why didn't I know that? And I love all the conspiracy theories and everything. Was it the 60 ounces? The 60 ounces? Is that what it is?
I don't know.
They say that it's the weight of the soul, that like bodies are always this much lighter from the time that they're alive, from the time that they die, and that must be like the actual mass of the soul that's leaving the body. I don't know. My pet theory to date is maybe a little raunchy, but it occurred to me that like nothing on this world, at any rate, nothing, no people, animals, plants, you know, come into being or furthering themselves, so come into being without at least one thing, whether it's the bee and the flower or whatever it is, birds and the bees, something has to orgasm. And I just thought, because I'd always thought, like, I'm sorry if this is crazy, but when you come, right, you are like outside of your own time and ego. Like that ceases to be relevant to you. And it's how we all came into the world, how everything came into the world. And I thought, how great would it be if on death, your whole state was then just like the natural state of the universe is just like an orgasm until you like become again. Maybe it could be anything. It could be everything. It could be all of them. You could go visiting things. You might go meet the prophets. You know, maybe death is like this big skyscraper and you just get to see everything. But I like the orgasm thing right now. It's hopeful, isn't it? Wouldn't that be cool?
Well, I mean,
it could be exhausting.
Shakespeare used to use death,
right, death
as orgasm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I once wrote a poem called "The Sex of Death" and "The Death of Sex."
Did you really?
which kind of involved that same thing, that same kind of idea of the lumping together of orgasm and death.
I want to read the poem.
Oh gosh, I don't know which book it's in.
It's somewhere. Find it. Send it.
Okay.
Okay.
So do you think we have a soul?
I don't know if we have a soul. I think that we do. Just because when you meet people or animals or trees even, and you might think, you can see older souls. You meet little kids and you think, that kid knows what's going on, you know, and meet some people that are absolutely young souls. And I always thought that it would take some evolution for a self to become, you know. You probably do spend so much time as grass, just, you know, gaining sentience before you. And why couldn't there be room for a sort of an independent soul in the universe? Maybe that's why the universe keeps expanding, you know, is that more and more souls come into being from everywhere, not just Earth, because that would be crazy.
Do souls die then, or are souls immortal?
I don't know if souls die or if they're immortal. After working on Socrates, he never really does prove it. We'd know if he had. I've just always wondered, because I always like Buddhism and the reincarnation thing, but I ask you why nobody ever gets reincarnated from someone from another planet. Why is that? Or is it really just this localized? Or is it just a matter of time?
Maybe we're the only planet with life on it.
Maybe. We're that cool. What are the odds then that we would even exist at all? And isn't it selfishness then to ask for immortality on top of it? I'd like to continue on. I've always thought the saddest thing about death is not being able to see the people that you love anymore, you know. I know a lot of people say that your afterlife is what you meant it to be. I would go so far as to argue that say there weren't gods in the first place, right, that are overseeing everything. Any kind of gods, anyone's gods. But all of them were made up. People wrote all these stories. And then the gods actually came into being because of the fervent belief of all the people. But then the gods were under some kind of obligation to take care of the people who brought them into being. So anybody that really believed in that god would be taken in by that god. Possibly. I don't know where that leaves atheists and agnostics and things like that, because it seems a shame that, like, if you didn't have faith that your soul would cease to be. Unless you willed it to be. Like, no, I am worm food, so you are. I don't know. We never get to know until we die. Such a great secret. Do you think they planned that? Do you think it's a huge practical joke? It's pretty funny. They did it on purpose.
What advice would you give to people in general who are down and who want to be happy but are finding it hard?
Oh, well, I've been there, and I would say that it's easier said than done. I know my dad says that worry creates a force field around whatever you're worrying about that will then, like, protect it. When I say don't worry, that's what he says. But I don't think that's true. I think that worrying is really just energy that you're expending on nothing. And that, I know my sister always says, if you can just sit back, you know, say you're really worried that something's going to happen and you're just so depressed about it. If you can really sit back and say, well, it's going to happen or it's not, you know, it usually works out. In fact, I'll say it always works out unless you die, because otherwise it's worked out. You made it. You might have gone bankrupt, you know, you might have lost your business, you might have lost your friend or whatever, but you're still there. So you got to deal with that, and you can choose then to be happy, because whatever beating yourself up doesn't help.
What scares you?
I'm scared of most things, honestly. I'm scared of choice, because I've always sort of got a complex about causality. And life is very uncertain for me, and I've kind of taken shelter now in a day job and writing, because gigging is exhausting and scary, and I would often feel like I was like, oh, your shoulders get up over your ears and feel like you're out in a storm, like you're King Lear out there, you know, you can't find any shelter. But when I think of that, I think that I have so many friends and such a wonderful family that loves me, and I don't think I'll be out on the street, you know. I think there's help if I need it. And as far as decisions, you can't know what's going to happen one way or another, so you do your best and try not to blame yourself if it didn't fall out the way you wanted it to. Because in the end, and I had to learn this from experience, because I was really sad for a long time. I'd say, oh, but I really wanted that, and it didn't happen, you know, and I'd blame myself, and I'd be upset, and I'd place my value on just making sure that everything went the way I wanted it to. But so far in my life, everything that didn't, it always worked out better, you know, and everything that I really wanted and I didn't get, something else happened that I so much prefer.